How are your customers thinking about investing in automation and autonomy today?
Our customers, large enterprise shippers, retailers, and many mid-sized companies, they have to solve with automation. There really isn't a choice in terms of the sheer volume. If you think about this problem, the sheer volume of items moving in the world, on some of them on pallets, some of them just floor loaded into trucks. You can't keep up with it. It is a tsunami. And I really believe that the automated solutions, robotic solutions, that they absolutely make sense to the customer.